No unfinished business. Go straight to number 6, staff reports. Public hearing report, zoning amendment bylaw number 962, 2019, 367 Highway 3. Recommendation that council received for information only the public hearing report zoning amendment bylaw number 962, 2019, 367 Highway 3.
Also move.
Councillor Gould, seconder. Councillor Elliott. Any questions? All in favor? So moved. Thank you. 6.2, the 2018 annual report. Recommendation that the draft 2018 annual report for the Town of Princeton be approved as released. Councillor Willis, seconder. Councillor Gould. Any questions? Comments? All in favor? So moved. Thank you. Council reports. Let's start with Councillor Willis today.
Well, I had a slow week, a busy work week, but a couple weeks, but I did make it up to the Princeton Rodeo this weekend and volunteered for a couple days, and it turned out to be one of the best turnouts they've had, and everyone was happy with the gates, and yeah, it worked out really well. So.
That's good to know. Thank you. Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I don't have my list of dates and meetings this time. I just thought I'd take the opportunity to talk about some conversations I've been having with some concerned citizens about our urban deer and some of the conflict that's been going on. Many residents are concerned that the numbers of resident deer are increasing in their neighborhoods, and some have witnessed some concerning conflicts between the deer and humans and deer and animals. So I can confirm the fawning season is here, so the fawns are out, which will make does more aggressive to animals and sometimes human. They're just being protective of their babies. The last deer count that I did with another person was 33, and it's the deer count system is a little flawed in the sense of the deer move and it's one person in one vehicle through the community. So you could be counting potentially the same little group twice. So I try to be mindful of that. And then also depending on the time of day, they could be hiding, they could be bedding down, and you may not see them. But definitely the higher concentration of urban deer are on the benches. I just want to say that Princeton Town Council is still committed to lobbying provincial government to increase our conservation services in our area. And we have received funding for 2019 for the Wild Safe Coordinator, and Carolyn Blank will continue to do her good work to educate citizens about reducing attractants to the wildlife in the areas, and then also help to reduce conflict. I also want to encourage residents that have concerns to report any conflict to the RAPP line, and we do have a link on our Town of Princeton app, and the phone number is readily available. Just Google it or call, we'll give it to you. And it's very important that we make these calls, because if we say to the government we need a conservation officer, and if we're not calling and they're saying, well, Princeton's not getting calls for service, then it's a little contrary to what we're asking for. So it's important that we do continue to call when there's conflict.
Thank you. Councillor Elliott.
Well, for change, I have probably the shortest report I've ever had to give at a council meeting. Sunday, June 9th, my wife and I attended a barbecue at Boundary Similkameen MLA Linda Larson's house in Oliver, where she announced her retirement from politics. And Thursday, June 13th, I attended a primary care workshop in Penticton with the mayor, and that is my report.
Thank you. Councillor McLean.
Just a couple things. I met with former Mayor of Karameas, Walter Despot, who's also the member on the South Okanagan and Similkameen Hospital Foundation.
Yes.
Am I close?
I think so.
He was looking for input possibility, and he had checked with the mayor as well, for a person to come from the Princeton area to represent the Similkameen on the foundation. I think this is important from a perspective of the foundation works very closely with Interior Health. When funds are needed for improvements or repairs or, whatever, when it's not in the budget, they're going to the foundation. So they work very closely. I think the fact that, I think if you have any knowledge of the history of the Karamis area, I think it certainly hasn't hurt the Karamis area to have Walter on the foundation, working together with Interior Health. And so we came up with a couple names and Walter will approach them and see if they're willing in that. But again, I would even go so far as to say it's that important to me, if it's that important to council, the foundation does not pay travel or any costs. In fact, if they do pay costs, they expect the person to remit that to the foundation as a donation sort of thing. From my perspective, I would like to throw out the idea that if we do, if we are lucky enough to get some person from Princeton representing the Similkameen on the foundation, at that point I would like to make a suggestion that perhaps we pay for mileage in terms of trying to recoup hit the person's cost to be traveling back and forth to Penticton. The other one was a little closer to Councillor Willis's. I took a drive and inspected the slide that came down in his area. Not only right next to the river, probably going up, I suppose 100 feet or more, and the effect it had, it slid down, I think, 25 feet into the river and pushed up the other side of the bank on the other side. And I guess at some point in time, and I would add that once I went by that area where the house is and the slide was right in front of you, I went by and looked way up the mountain, and you can see the whole mountain has slid away. This is, I think, the third slide along that area. From there, there's two more farther up the river. And it would be interesting in my mind to get the Director of Infrastructure to have a look to see if this isn't something that could concern the town of Princeton. If there's nothing we can do and whatever, that's fine. But if it is something that is going to put the town of Princeton in danger in terms of a big slide comes down there, it gets backed up into like a reservoir and then bursts loose, we're going to have some high water coming down. And whether there's been speculation of the cause and all that sort of thing, and I'm not going to get into that, but I think it's probably pertinent from a municipal perspective to be able to have a look at it, see what we think about it, and then perhaps offer any input that the director would have in terms of our concerns or whatever. Anyway, that was my report.
Thank you. Okay, June 6th, I attended the Regional District Board meeting. June 8th was a super busy day in town. First, I attended there was a swim meet down at the swimming pool. It was an unsanctioned meet. There was 140 swimmers, plus coaching staff, plus parents. It was something to see. There was people everywhere. You had to park up by the band office to get a parking spot. And then I attended the community market. Then I went to the Legion for a Veterans Appreciation Lunch. It was a well-attended lunch this year. Then I went to the rodeo, and that was a great turnout. I couldn't believe it. There was a lot of people there. That was great. And I'm happy to say too that after talking to the RCMP, they had no at the roadblocks. They had nobody pulled over. So that was good news for us. Not so good for some of the stats, I guess. And then I attended the House on a Play Cliff put on by the up at Riverside there, and that was a great show. And then on June 11th, Director Schatz and I met with Natalie Durham of the BC Construction Association. She works at integrating new Canadians into job placements. Her job is specifically for the construction sector. So when new Canadians move over here and they can't necessarily meet their engineering standards or whatever, she'll find jobs that they can still do to stay in their industry. So we had about an hour and a half, 2-hour meeting with her, I think it was. And then on June 13th, I attended the primary care workshop for elected officials and senior staff over in Penticton with Councillor Elliott, and that was, I think it was more, I think for myself and for Councillor Elliott, it wasn't as much new information as reaffirming what we already knew about primary care networks, which we should be starting our phase, I think, this fall for the primary care networks, or it's a different way of looking at healthcare in general. So instead of going to see a doctor, if there's a nurse practitioner or there's a nurse or some other resource, the doctors can get you into those resources so that you can get the best care, primary care, for the needs that you have instead of always going in to see the doctor. Because sometimes if it's a diabetic issue, you need to see a diabetic nurse, right? You don't necessarily need to see the doctor every week when a nurse can help you with that. So that's coming. Penticton is already, theirs is already running, and sorta. All of our CS are in the works, and we're slated for this fall. So, and that's my report. Okay, we have number 8, correspondence receive and file. We have a thank you from the Garden Club, and we have a thank you from the Traditional Music Society. And we have a recommendation that items 8.1 and 8.2 be received and filed. Councillor Willis, seconder. Councillor McLean, any questions? All in favor? So moved. Thank you. We have correspondence. Action is required. We have a letter from the Canadian Wood Council. The 2019 Community Recognition Awards call for nominations is now open. We have a recommendation that Council direct Gary Schatz, Director of Economic Development, to submit a nomination to the Canadian Wood Council BC Community Recognition Award for the new gateways.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Willis, second.
I'll second.
Elliott, Councillor Gould. Questions? All in favor? So moved. Thank you. 9.2, we have a letter from MP Dan Albas requesting a letter of support for Bill C-477. And the recommendation is that Council approve the attached draft letter to Dan Albas, Member of Parliament, in support of Bill C-477.
Also move.
Councillor Gould, seconder. Councillor Elliott, questions? All in favor? So moved. We have no bylaws, no new business. That brings us to agenda conclusion, motion to close. Recommendation that the meeting be closed to the public for the purpose of considering the following: personal information about an identifiable individual who is being considered for a municipal award or honor, or who has offered to provide a gift to the municipality on condition of anonymity, and B, negotiations and related discussion respecting the proposed provision of the municipal service that are at the preliminary stages, and that in view of the council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. Motion? Councillor Willis, seconder. Councillor McLean, all in favor? So moved. We are closed.